What do you do when the financial stuff hits the fan? Well, you're going to find out today. It's easy to be positive when your business is doing well, but you are going to have some financial challenges because they are inevitable. So how do you prepare for times when the bears are out, markets are plunging, recessions are on the horizon, and the four horsemen of the financial apocalypse are circling your business and laughing like pirates? We have the answer for you today on Run a Profitable Gym. I'm your host, Mike Warkentin. Please hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you don't miss anything just like this. Kenny Markwardt is a certified two-brain mentor. He's the owner of Sandpoint Strength and Conditioning in Idaho. At our recent meetup for upper-level gym owners in Columbus, Ohio, there's a Tinker meetup. Kenny laid out a plan to help other entrepreneurs prepare for a financial downturn. He's going to give you an exclusive look at that plan today. Kenny, welcome. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about this one because I have experienced financial downturns. And back in the day, this was, I want to say 2013, 14, 15, somewhere in there, I panicked. And I was really scared. We were losing about $5,000 a month. I didn't know what to do. I did the only thing I could think of, which was call Chris Cooper, and ended up working with a mentor to help me save my gym. But I had no plan whatsoever. Now that we've evolved in the last 10 years, mentors and people like you have created plans to help gym owners sleep better at night, make better decisions, plan for the future. Let's get into it and make it happen, because I think I lived through this and I want to see others succeed where I failed. So before the show, you said this: most of us worry about a financial downturn without actually knowing what we're worried about. That was me. How are you defining the problem now and helping gym owners find clarity?
I think that we unfortunately run really, I want to say this the right way, but they're fragile businesses. There's a lot of things that can influence change for us negatively. Coaches leaving to start gyms, just typical down months due to an economy, seasonality. There's just a lot of things that can happen. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a negative perspective, but the point of it is that I think that a lot of us as entrepreneurs, once we get our head above water just a little bit, we start to forecast in the future and try and protect this wonderful thing that we've created. And so once we start to get into groups and talk to other gym owners and hear horror stories or even just due to our natural anxieties, we start to worry about these things. And I think that through this planning, you can really as you said before, help yourself sleep a lot better by knowing that you have a plan and that you have an adequately stocked war chest to survive it.
And that's important because you can think of all these different things, but money solves a lot of problems and profitability solves a lot of problems. It doesn't solve every problem, but as Chris Cooper said, money solves the money problem. And so like running a profitable business definitely is a good thing, because then you can build up that war chest. You can make some plans and say, if this happens, I do this and I have this funds available, or I can access these funds, or here's what I do. So all of that, I love it because I tend to worry about things more than I should, but this will help. So causes of downturns. What kind of stuff is out there and how can you avoid it, or can you?
I honestly don't think that you can forever. I think that once you've done this for a long enough time, you're going to experience some form of a downturn. If we're talking on a macro level, just economically, we're going to see downturns every, 8 to 12 years or so. And so that's going to happen. Coaches leaving and starting gyms, I referenced that a second ago, but that's a really common one as well. Even if it's not one of your coaches leaving to start another gym, a new gym pops up in town. They undercharge for everything. You lose a handful of members or more. COVID, that's the elephant in the room. We think we all saw pretty significant downturns due to that. And I think that the list can go on and on and on. So I really don't think that you can avoid that from eventually happening. And having seen behind the scenes of, I think, over 100 gyms now, with me working with them one-on-one through two-brain, every single one of them has experienced that in one form or another.
And I'll give you a couple of things to think about, listeners. The average micro gym has in the neighborhood of about 160 clients, something like that. So like you lose 20, all of a sudden that's a big chunk. Like that's quite a few. And that happened to me. I lost, I think, 31 time in a whack, and it was due to some problems with the competition and so forth. But losing a chunk of clients, not super uncommon. If you're running a smaller model, maybe it's PT or a small group, semi-private kind of stuff. Let's say you only have 50 clients. You lose 5. That's a lot. Percentage wise, there are small things that can happen there. Maybe your marketing, let's look at it, even just a small little thing. Maybe the URL for your booking appointment page is broken and your marketing funnel is clogged and you're not getting any leads. No one's booking appointments. And so for 2 months, you don't notice it. And in those 2 months, 6 people leave because they move out of town, but you don't add a single person. Little stuff like that can have a huge effect. So it could be as big as a global pandemic. It also could be as small as a broken URL that clogs your funnel. Whatever it is, though, there's a problem and you got to prepare for it. So Kenny, you've got some 4 stages or definitions of these scenarios. Let's work through some survival strategies for your 4 scenarios here. You've got some interesting terms for how you've classified this stuff. Talk to me about it.
Yeah. So, realistically, I think about percentages. I think that's the most easy way to think.
On it.
Yeah. So I tend to frame up what we're talking about here is a stress test. And I tend to frame those up in 10% drop, 20%, 30%, 40%. Mm-hmm. I'm not aware of a lot of gyms that I've worked with or seen that have lost more than 40% in a short window of time. Even during COVID, I don't think that I'm aware of many of that. So that's kind of worst case scenario. That's like what I call fall flat on your face, can't get up, you're broken. Yep. And so by working through those, sorry, to re-answer your question, it was a hiccup, a stumble, fall flat on your face, and then get hit by a bus. Is the way I like to analogize those. But the 10% drop is that's conceivable next month for most gyms. Even 20%, those are not that big a deal, but it's still something that you should prepare for. And then those bigger ones are again much more catastrophic in theory. But through working through an exercise of a stress test, you can understand how to strategize for if and when that happens. And it brings a lot of peace by looking through your profit and loss line by line and understanding what you will be eliminating to eliminate costs and become probably cash flow positive. So
your first one was 10%, correct? That was the hiccup?
Yep, that's a hiccup. Yeah.
And so revenue stats from gyms, average gyms, 12,000, 13,000 sometimes. That's our state of the industry report last year, which is coming out soon at the end of this year. Those are not uncommon numbers. So you lose $1,300 and you don't have to work very hard to lose $1,300 off your top line. And all of a sudden that's 10%. Kenny, what do you do? Or how do you plan for this?
This is going to depend very specifically on the gym and your situation. And that's where, not to get too distracted, but one of the questions that bothered me to no end for my first 10 years of gym ownership was, how much money do I need in the bank?
Yeah.
And you can hear, I've heard as little as 1 month of expenses in the bank. And I've heard as many as, I think, 24 months I heard on a podcast once, which terrified me. Because that is a massive, that's a huge number for my gym. And but coming back to the topic is, depending on what that looks like for you, assuming that you have some cash in the bank, in a 10% stumble for something that is not probably going to be prolonged or it can be fixable, you may not change anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you can build up that war chest and survive something without upsetting the apple cart too much, and where people won't maybe notice. Mm-hmm. In my example for my gym, when I run through this stress test, I look at things like my equipment budget, my repairs and maintenance budget, and the things that I say, you know what, I don't have to do this. I think it's a good idea to continue to refresh equipment, to continue to update the facility. But if I'm going to go cash flow negative on those because I have a month that is a little bit of a downturn, I'm probably going to hold back on doing those things, which would save me personally. That would be my gym's about $1,300. So that would put me cash flow positive in your example.
Mm-hmm. And I like that one, where my business, for example, with my wife, it works better to evaluate it every 2 months. We obviously do financials every month, but every 2 months seems to give us a better picture, because sometimes big expenses crop up here and revenue pops on the other side and so forth. And every 2 months we have a good idea. I'm not saying you should just, brush off a bad $1,300 loss or something like that, but I usually like to look at it in a bigger perspective. Even those quarterly reports help a lot. But like what you said, if you're saying okay, that was a tough month, maybe you're just going to hold back. Maybe that renewing that certification that 3 months early, maybe you renew it 2 months early, put that thing off or whatever, you could defer some expenses. So your best advice there is for small things, don't sweat it super hard, but do evaluate what the problem was and take some steps, minor steps, to just cover up that revenue. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. And what you just said is to do the forensics on what actually happened is another thing that is, I think it's missed a lot. I can say that more gym owners would be really, really involved in their metrics and can understand exactly why things have happened, both positively and negatively, and look back on their months and reflect on their income and their expenses and see why or why not they ended up black or red at the end of every single month. And so that's first and foremost, that's more important than the stress test itself, is just understanding how and why things happen so that you can determine if you do have a down month, why that happened. And if there's a bigger inherent problem that you really need to focus on, or if it's just, something, the weather was real nice that month and everybody stayed outside, because that's just what it was like here in North Idaho. And we only get a couple months like that. So
it could be as simple as if you look at your profits down by $1,300 and you freak out, but then you look and you're like, oh, I had one annual expense that came out that month. And like, if I want, I could switch to the monthly payment plan and spread that out if I felt like it. Maybe it's as simple as discovering something like that. In other cases, it might be something more severe that you have to take steps on. But looking at those things and digging into the numbers is the only way that you're going to figure that out. So you've got, that's kind of the, you said that one's the hiccup. What's a stumble? What's above 10%, above 10%? Where are we getting at here?
That's where we're getting towards the 20%. And 20%, that feels a little bit more of you're going to feel that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And again, that can be, depending on your gym's situation, like that may not be a massive problem. It may be, depending on how you do your PT renewals, or if people are traveling out of town to some of those bigger ticket clients, maybe they're back next month. And that's not that big of a deal. And so you really don't need to change a whole lot. You just might lose a little bit of money, and you can dig into your war chest to survive that. Mm-hmm. But then you're probably going to look to eliminate a couple of other things that would be able to pare yourself down. Now, what I like to do, regardless of the gym, is to compare. I think that the Two Brain best practices of metrics will give you a good indication on where you need to start cutting. Uh-huh. In other words, if you're using our 22%, 33%, 44%, as it pertains to fixed costs, owner pay, and staff costs, by comparing what either your projection is if you're doing the stress test, or where you are in actuality as you do your financial forensics at the end of the month, you will understand what should probably be cut, but will then need to be put through the lens of what's important to you at your gym. And as an example, as we get further and further down the line, you're going to need to start cutting more and more. Mm-hmm. But as in my example, the staff that I have right now, there are a handful of them who have been with me for 5, 6, 7 years, and they're incredibly valuable to me. So even if I'm looking at my Two Brain standards of metrics and I'm over in staff costs, I'm probably going to do everything that I possibly can to retain those folks. Yep. And again, I'm not suggesting that is what every gym should do, but that's my situation. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably not going to be able to decrease my lease, nor am I going to be able to decrease my utilities. Like, those are going to be fixed. And so in my example, that might come down to my marketing. It might come down to my dues and subscriptions. It might come down to my pay, as much as I don't want to cut that. We've built up enough in our personal war chest to be able to survive something like that. So point being is that, to sum that up, as I would look at your Two Brain metrics as you go further and further down the decrease, and use those as a guiding light to understand what you should cut, but then put it through the lens of the long-term vision of this thing, and not jettisoning all your important people because you have a couple of bad months.
Yeah. And there's a classic example that Chris has used is, I have 3 music subscriptions and I only use 1. Get rid of those things. Like, that's when you start going through, like, just pump that stuff. An interesting thing that Chris has said, that sometimes you can cut some stuff, but other times you might want to say, how could I get more out of this? And that's a really interesting one where you're talking about your staff, because your staff's valuable. And like, we'll probably get to like staff layoffs down the line here as we get to emergency plans. But at this stage, you have super valuable people, probably impossible to replace right away because they've been with you for 5, 6 years. They're experienced. They're great. You don't want to cut them, but could you help them, make more money, generate more money, more revenue by saying, hey, let's put a specialty nutrition accountability program in place next month. Let's get 10 people at $150 and let's get $1,500 in the door. Could you do that? Yeah, you could do that. Could someone run an Olympic lifting program? These are talented coaches. You could do that. So in certain cases, there may be a way for you to look at your stuff. Yeah, you'll have to make some cuts. In other places, you might be able to say, how can I leverage this to make even more? Chris's example, again, call your accountant. How can I get more value out of your service? Talk to your mentor. How can I get more value out of your service? Mentor says, hey, we're going to put together this challenge. We're going to make this money. You pay it back. So that's an interesting way, a lot of ways to look at it. That 20% is definitely going to make you feel like the airplane just hit a big bump and it's not going to feel great. Let's go deeper. Let's look at the next one. The next one's probably pretty scary.
Yeah, 30% is again, I think that's probably along the lines of where a lot of people, what they experienced during COVID. Yep. I think that's getting close to that. And that is probably where maybe you don't have to let people go. But like you said, you either need to turn them more entrepreneurial, which is a great option. And in fact, during some of our slow months, I've had to turn to some of my staff and say, hey, look, we're slower. Like people just aren't walking in the door right now. So here's what you can do to try and generate more income for yourself. So that's one option. Turn your staff more entrepreneurial. The other is you may just lose some classes. And I think for most people,
that's a good one.
Yeah, based on what they're paying per class, for if they have it 5 days a week, it works out to be about $500 a month or so. So for every class that you lose, that's another $500 a month towards the positive, which in a case where 30% in a 30% decrease, I think that most people will be aware that something is amiss and that they will be understanding in which like you might need to make some changes. And what I mean by that is I don't, as the captains of our ship, it is important for us to be calm and confident and project a feeling of strength and not belie the fears that are underneath or what's necessarily going on and not make our problems everybody else's problems. And I think that's where it comes in at the 10 to 20% numbers is that I will probably try and keep everything as normal as possible to not project a like, oh my gosh, where's everybody going? What are we doing? We're not cleaning the gym anymore because we dropped 10%.
2 squares of toilet paper per visit.
Exactly. We're rationing everything out now. Sorry. But I think that at some of those levels, it will most likely be perceived by all that, like, yeah, maybe we have another 2008 recession or we have something that's significant where just due to the nature of that, it will make sense for you to have to consolidate some classes and tough it out a little bit. And that will be more than likely acceptable for folks. So you can probably add that $500 a month by losing a class to help keep yourself more positively cash flowing and not have too much of an impact on your business.
Yeah, so that's like slightly larger structural changes, we'll call it. And like an example for me is I think at our peak, we had about 230 members. We bled off a bunch. All of a sudden we're down in that 180 range and creeping downwards. Things weren't going super well. And all of a sudden, some of those classes that used to have 8 people now had 2. And the people in those classes kind of were like looking around, they could sense it was a little bit weird. And like, I don't need this 1030 class that a bunch of realtors wanted who are all gone now, right? Like that just wasn't needed. So like canceling classes feels really rough, but when I canceled it, no one left. They just came at noon instead. My noon class was better and I saved that money. So that's something that you could definitely do. And like, honestly, that's something you probably should do just as an order of business anyways. Like Chris has the concept, kill it or fill it. If you've got classes that are undertended that are costing you money, why do you have them? Can you fill them first? That's your first option. Can you get more people in that class? And if not, do I need it? Probably not. But you're starting to make these structural changes now where you're really looking at stuff and saying, okay, I might need to make some aggressive moves. And in COVID, that was a big one, like where we had to pivot entire models and things like that. At 30%, if we recommend, say, a 33% profit margin or, net owner benefit plus profit, 30% almost evaporates at that point. That point you're struggling. Kenny, is this where you might talk to a landlord and start asking for some concessions, or is that coming still?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm recommending that people do is go line by line through their profit and loss and understand their individual scenarios and see what the flexibility, how their relationship is with that landlord, and to understand maybe they have some loans that they can do an interest only payment on instead of paying those back. Perhaps they can. This is a slippery one that I would probably, if we're gonna transition into the 40% drop, the slippery one is that the owner starts to do more things on their own. Like maybe they're coaching some more classes, maybe they're taking some more PT clients, maybe they're But depending on their bandwidth and appetite for their ability to do that, that's where that's in their individual situation, they might start to do something like that.
So let's jump into that. Let's go right into that 40%. Let's talk about like, this is kind of Death Valley where like it's starting to get grim and you might have to do some things that you don't really want to do at all. Get into that one.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us carry pretty good sized dues and subscription line items. I think those will probably go away. We'd probably be managing our own leads, calling our own people. And I think that we would more than likely be diminishing our advertising budgets. That's actually probably higher up on the like, that's probably in that 20 to 30%. I would be looking at that myself and looking to more free marketing. Most gyms that I know and work with are doing some form of paid marketing, which is a great tool, but there's a ton of ways to get free, to do free advertising, to get people in your gym for free. So that would be definitely something to eliminate there.
So listeners, Kenny is not saying stop your marketing. He's saying that maybe look at your ad spend and focus on some like referral marketing, goal review sessions. Hey, do you have a friend? Bring a friend days, some of the stuff that costs you only your time, which is still super valuable, but he's not saying stop marketing. He's saying look at your paid marketing and see if you can use time if you need to. Keep going.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. And then, so, cleaning was another thing I referenced a second ago, where that I would probably start to clean my gym less. Might clean my gym once a week instead of right now it's cleaned 4 times a week. I think that it would probably be a continuation of the elimination of either classes or consolidation, where the semi-privates become a really massive opportunity for people where they can start to split the bandwidth amongst their valuable staff and retain a lot of their PT, but keep their, the backbone of their team intact while allowing them to consolidate their hours. And let's see.
Are you laying people off here? Would you lay people off at this stage, or is that what something you're looking at?
Oh, yeah, I think so. But again, it would depend on, if I'm looking at the majority of gyms out there, there is usually somebody who's full-time coaches are a big part of gyms these days. I'm not sure if at that $10,000, $12,000 a month in revenue number, people have a full-time coach or not. But I would be fighting my hardest to retain my full-time staff, and my part-time and bench coaches would probably be moved to the side for that time being. And again, splitting that stuff up. What those part-time and bench coaches were doing amongst the full-timers and possibly myself.
Mm-hmm. And this happened like when we went through the whole COVID thing. We had a whole bunch I hadn't coached a class in a number of years. We had a whole bunch of people on staff. And then when we couldn't use our physical space for a period of months and we were broadcasting workouts on Zoom, we had no hours for them. And it was the sad fact, we just had to start taking that over myself. I started running some of the classes. My wife did most of them, but it was the owners doing all the stuff. But this was emergency at that point because we're still paying money or paying rent on a building that we can't use. We still have all these dues and subscriptions and costs that we can't get rid of, like billing software and things like that. But our revenue is down quite a bit, even though like we followed the 2-Brain plan and we kept charging our members and we pivoted online as fast as we could. But the fact is, some people lost their jobs and they canceled, and other people didn't want to do the online thing. And so the revenue just went down, and we had to by any means necessary. And that's, it's a tough one, but you have to look at that. You can't float the boat, obviously retain staff members forever. Even when you're bleeding out money, at some point you might have to cut them. But Kenny, this is an interesting thing, because you said it's not great for a gym owner to come off the CEO pedestal and start cleaning again and doing all these other jobs. But if you're doing CPR on your business and you have to do it, fine. But then you have to reclimb that value ladder, so to speak, right? Where you're going to offload those jobs as soon as possible once this patient comes back to life. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I see gym owners get back into some of those roles. And one of the first things to go once they take up their bandwidth with coaching and other jobs in the gym is they lose track of the sales and marketing, which is the most valuable thing that a gym owner can do, in my opinion. Yep. And so they stop following up the leads, and they stop doing email marketing. They stop doing they stop doing the proactive things that they can do to rebuild their business. And so they end up kind of in a hole that they have a really hard time getting out of, because they've worked themselves back into a job and doing jobs that are not going to right the ship.
Yeah. And like another Cooper quote is you can't cut your way to growth. So if you have to like slash expenses to survive, you honestly want to keep growing, and you can't grow that by vacuuming your gym, right? So you have to figure out a way. If you're going to dig yourself out of this 30-40% hole, it's not by maintaining, it's by like making sure that the wall, like the flames are out, and then rebuilding things around so that you can actually grow. And like, what would be a big strategy for you? Like if you right now, let's say you got a 40% drop in revenue and you were like, oh, I got to do something. You do all your cuts, you analyze your expenses, you go to the bone, and you figure out like save as much there by cutting. What would be your next step to rebuilding? What would you do?
I would start going through every single one of my lost clients one by one.
There's a good one.
Print out that list and go one by one and figure out where those people went, what they're doing now, and then get on the phone. Start calling, texting, and getting a hold of all of those people who are very, very warm leads and can often be very easy conversions to get them back in the gym. They get it. They know what the deal is, and they may just be a click away from re-entering your gym.
Wow.
The same thing would be the missed opportunities. So a lot of us have no sweat intros that don't sell for some reason. And following up with those people who have already expressed interest and who may or may not have converted just for one reason or another, they still need fitness. And so to reach out to those people, again, individually, and then doing something like a 7-word email that we recommend about whether or not they're so interested in their fitness, but doing it individually would be my recommendation there. And then starting to run affinity marketing events, bring a friend days, community events, and just stoking the fire again and bringing those warm leads back inside the gym as quickly as humanly possible.
And I'll tack one on that. If listeners, if you're not doing goal review sessions, that would be the time to start doing them, because what you've got is you have your clients. They know, like, and trust you. They're in the building. They see you every day. Sit down with them, ask them what their goals, and then give them a prescription to help them go further faster. And our stats say 30% of people who do goal review sessions will upgrade their prescriptions by 30%. So this is like not shooting fish in a barrel, but you're going to get more money out of your current clients. Your average revenue per member is going to go up. Retention is going to go up. Do that. If you're struggling, that would be a perfect thing that you could put in. That links up with what Kenny's saying. Affinity marketing opportunities are embedded in the prescriptive model. I'll put a link in the show notes. In those goal review sessions, bring a friend days are perfect. Hey, we're having a bring a friend day. Who's helped you most on your journey? Could we thank them by bringing that person to the bring a friend night that we're hosting Friday? That stuff works really, really well. Only costs you time. Is there any other big ones that you've got there for rebuilding?
I think just to hone in on that topic a little bit more is the specificity of it.
Yeah.
In that with your lost clients and with your missed opportunities, and to echo what you were saying with goal reviews, being really specific with those, I think there's a lot of revenue that can be attained through members who are on a limited membership every month and going to just unlimited. I'm not positive to our exact numbers, but our difference is about $50 a month per person. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's a really hard sell to get them to go to unlimited. And even if that's just 20 people, that's $1,000 right there. And that's pretty quick and easy. But again, the entire point of it was being specific and not necessarily just sending out the mass email to your lost clients or your missed opportunities, or even about the goal reviews. It's finding those great opportunities that would benefit from either rejoining the gym, converting from a meeting you already had, or from upgrading their membership, and spending your time as efficiently as possible on those warm leads.
Yeah. And this is where could you run a plug and play challenge? Two Brain has those available for clients. You could do something like that. Could you use a plug and play retail strategy where people order stuff, you're not holding inventory, but it's just drop shipped elsewhere? Yeah, every dollar counts. You could do something like that. Kenny, I'm going to ask you about this one, because this is a really bad temptation that can be really, I'll just ask. Would you ever run a paid in full discount program in a time of great need?
I've seen that go really, really, really poorly.
Yeah.
I would hesitate to say a concrete no. Again, it would be dependent, but I really do not like that. Again, from watching it through, I don't know how many gyms I've seen try it and have that blow up, because you're just kicking the can down the road. Because
you get the money, then you spend the money, you don't fix the problem, and then you got to do another paid in full discount, but 3 months earlier this time.
Yeah. The worst. I mean, this is an unfortunate reality, but you close your gym and now you owe people a bunch of money.
And then someone's chasing you. You got bounty hunters.
Yeah, that's not a good opportunity. So no, I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a fan of paid in polls. I just think, again, kicks the can down the road and it gives you a quick hit of feeling good to feel bad next month, because now you're even further in the hole. So
yeah, it's better to fix the problem than to like take that short-term loan shark loan from your client is essentially what it comes down to. And like, it doesn't fix the problem. And Chris has he's written about this, the details. Numerous businesses did this repeatedly, and all of a sudden it's just like they owe so much money. There's no revenue. Everyone's training for free and they're done. And then what you said, they close, they owe people money. And it's just, it's litigation and the whole, it's just life ruining. So like, stay away from that. As we close this off, so why is, again, we've talked about this, but why is it important for owners to plan for these scenarios? Because a lot of people, let's say they're riding high right now and they're like, the life is beautiful, nothing's ever going to happen. Why should people, like, is it important for every gym owner, regardless of station, to go through this right now and just start thinking about what they would do?
Yeah, 100%. It is not only because I think that entrepreneurs are inherently anxious because of the fact that we are, as the analogy I made before, the captains of the ship, and it is our duty to identify all the potential icebergs that could be out there. But that also leaves us with that feeling of oh my gosh, what if,
Mm-hmm.
which all of a sudden everything can become a catastrophe in your head. Which, again, that's the identification and awareness of those things is okay, but the exercise of running through your hypothetical plan to slay the dragon will give you that peace to know, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do if and when this happens. And second to that is understanding how much cash that you need in the bank. Again, going back to the reference I made previously, is that when I heard somebody say I needed 24 months of expenses in the bank, and that was
not doable.
$1 million. I need $1 million to float my gym.
Earning 0.2% interest. That's great.
That's it. Exactly. So a lot of what I talked about at the Tinker meetup was that, hey, once you have the war chest built and once you've identified what your tolerance for risk is to survive these situations, a lot of the time people realize they need a lot less cash than they think. And then that allows them to make other investments, whether they're back into their gym, whether they're external investments, or honestly, whether it just allows them less guilt when they take family vacations or buy the new car that they've needed for 5 or 6 years. You know, I think that the identification of what you actually need frees up that money for bigger and better opportunities. And on the flip side, if you don't have that much money in the bank and you recognize that you do need more to survive one of these hypotheticals, then that's fine. You've at least named what you need, and you're not just chasing some rabbit you're never going to catch, quite frankly.
Yeah, you can figure some things out too, because you could get, access to credit is also something that you could use in a short term if you don't want to have the money right there available sitting there. That's something you can do. Chris has also talked about a little bit. If you hold a ton of money in your business and you get sued, that money is up for fighting with. Like you might end up losing that. So sometimes not holding a ton of money in your business is a good thing, but you do have to have a plan for where can I get this cash if I do need it. Kenny, I guess it's going to be personal. You talk to mentees about it, but what's a rule of thumb? And then 24 months seems like a lot. What's a little bit more reasonable for a micro gym owner? Do you have any ideas on that?
I think that what I've found when I run through this exercise with people is they need closer to 2 or 3 months. Because again, what you can figure out is that through some relatively easy costs, you can get yourself cash flow positive. I've figured out that even with a 40% drop and through making a lot of these changes, I can be cash flow positive without I've said this before, upsetting the apple cart.
No.
So I think that 2 or 3 months of expenses is very, very sufficient.
And it's not that difficult if you have a 30% profit margin to build up those 2 to 3 months. At that point, you can hold on to that stuff as you see fit and start looking at making those other, hacking some stuff out to get cash flow positive, where you may not even need the 2 or 3 months. But if you were given a quarter, 3 months to fix some stuff, put some new revenue things in place, make some emergency measures, you may not need that whole thing, but it's nice to have. Again, a mentor can look at your exact business and tell you what exactly works for you. The models will be slightly different if you've got mega lease that's $30,000 on a gigantic square footage, or if it's just like you're paying $800 a month for a 400 square feet or something like that. Things will change a little bit. Also requires staffing, cash flow, things like that. But the whole point of what Kenny's getting at is do some planning, run your numbers. And Kenny, if people don't know how to do this, what can a mentor do? How does a mentor fit into this whole thing?
A mentor through helping them with their metrics. Again, the first and foremost important part is understanding the metrics. Yeah, do your metrics. Know those things inside and out. I know that not every gym is a CrossFit gym, but if somebody came to you and said, hey, I want to go to the CrossFit Games, the first thing you would ask them is like what their performance, what their numbers are. They said, hey, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Every single one of those. And the more specific, the better. Yeah. And so to understand that, like, to be a true professional in this, you have to know your numbers inside and out. And then through that knowledge, your mentor can help you understand either, like you said, to get more return on their expenses that they're getting to create more revenue, or to understand what things you're just spending money on that are not making you more money. Like I said, the equipment budget thing. I know I see a lot of gym owners spend money on stuff that does not provide them a single dollar more revenue every month, and yet they spend it because they think that the members need or want this. But realistically, it's just not the case.
You don't need more air bikes and battle ropes and all the other stuff. Like, yes, you could buy it, but is it tied to revenue? Absolutely not. No one comes to gyms for your equipment. They come for your coaching. The equipment budget can definitely go, at least in the short term. And you said it, you have to replace stuff that's broken eventually. There's a maintenance cost, but like, don't buy 70 sandbags, right? It's not gonna, I've seen that one, like it doesn't work. You don't need to double the number of ski ergs so you can program cooler workouts. Chris started his business, I think originally, I think he had a plyo box. I think he had a dumbbell, a skipping rope, and a exercise band or something like that, and maybe a barbell. And you like carry that around to people's houses. You need less stuff than you think, and you might even need less space. There are all sorts of tactics. I'll throw out another idea. You could sublease an unused portion of your space in a time of great need to get revenue out of a vacant room, right? That's an interesting one. The point, a mentor has seen all this stuff, can analyze your metrics, tell you where your greatest areas of need are, and then give you the exact tactics that will help you get back on track really fast. So here's a question, Kenny. This is the last one I'm going to ask you. If someone is struggling right now, would part of their plan be getting a mentor? Because buying a mentor is a call, but I have talked to people on the show who were at their worst points. They spent some money on mentorship that they didn't have, and good things happened. What would you say?
Yeah, I think that's almost all of us. The words, all of us who are run successful, profitable gyms have a mentor. I'm not aware of many that do not, quite frankly. And I think that's the best return on investment that you can possibly get, is having somebody tell you, hey, this is what you should be doing. I've seen this hundreds of times. Here's exactly what you need to do. Here's the plan. And again, not only for peace of mind, because I find that the worst mental states of business ownership is when I don't know what to do. I know I have a problem and I don't know what to do. That's the worst. To have somebody be able to tell you exactly what to do is just, it brings out not only peace of mind, but profitability.
Mm-hmm. I interviewed a guy on this show. He's from Croatia, and he told me that his profit in July was triple what his revenue was before mentorship. So his revenue tripled, and that's his right? So he's done amazing things with the result of mentorship. It should be an investment. You will get a return on your investment by putting in the work, working with someone like Kenny. You can find out more about that by booking a call. There's a link in the show notes. Kenny, thanks for taking us through the worst case scenarios. Hopefully listeners will never need them, but if they find themselves in there, they can definitely work with you to get out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, this has been Run a Profitable Gym. My name is Mike Warkentin. On your way out the door, please hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode just like this.